Exposed. 3 spine-chilling true stories of sinister hauntings. On a cursed rainy night, alone Sarah pulled into her driveway. Rain hammering the roof of her old car like 1,000 frantic fingers. Goosebumps prickled at her skin as shadows danced in the corners of her vision. It was one of those nights when the air felt electric with unease, as if the storm carried secrets beneath its violent fury. She trudged through the puddles, the echo of her footsteps swallowed by the tempest. Was it just her imagination? Or was something lurking in those darkened trees, watching her? Once inside, the comforting patter of the rain vanished. The stillness settled over her like a shroud. Her heart raced. The living room was dimly lit, a single bulb flickering ominously. Felt wrong. A cold draft slithered through the house, rustling the curtains like a warning. There, on the couch, was her daughter Emily, small, innocent, and blissfully unaware, wrapped in a patchwork blanket. A vision that should have brought her warmth instead filled her with an unsettling dread. Then, from the depths of her home, a muffled thud reverberated through the silence. It froze Sarah in place. Thinking it was just exhaustion playing tricks, she shook her head, but her pulse quickened. Memories of Mr. Jensen flitted through her mind, the elderly neighbor with a smile that always felt a touch too wide, whose glance lingered just a heartbeat longer than it should have. He always insisted on helping her with groceries and sudden repairs. It was sweet in a way, but tonight it felt suffocating. The flickering lights flared with new vigor, and whispers a low, chilling coo slithered through the walls, inching closer, as though the house held its own breath. They wrapped around her like tendrils, echoing the ghost stories she'd brushed off at the diner. Myths of malevolent spirits prowling neighborhoods during storms. Nothing to worry about, she muttered to herself, stepping closer to Emily. Just then, the whispers escalated, weaving a sinister melody that clawed at her sanity. The air felt heavy, charged, a palpable dread pressing down on her chest. The sound of a crash cut through her resolve, booming like thunder. She whipped around, heart pounding in her ears, adrenaline flooding her limbs. She reached for Emily but hesitated as a shadow flickered across the wall, long and thin. Impossible. It twisted, morphed, forming a grotesque figure that sent ice through her veins. Terror gripped her. The creeping fear wasn't just from ghost tales, but from the reality that something malevolent lurked inside and possibly outside her home, perhaps linked to the familiar face next door. Before continuing, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Terror rippled through Sarah as she stood frozen, heart racing in her chest. It dawned on her that safety wasn't an anchor, but a fragile illusion. She mustered her courage and ventured toward the noise. Shadows clung to her like a second skin. The whispers morphed into horrid laughter, cacophonous and mocking, as if the walls themselves were alive, relishing in her fear. Each step filled her with a sense of foreboding, a creeping thought. What if this house, her sanctuary, held the darkness of its own? A crash sounded again. This time it was not a phantom. It echoed with the weight of 100 stories, whispering betrayals and unshed tears. She felt the world tilt, her heart clenched tight. Was it really the storm fueling her dread? Or had Mr. Jensen's curious gaze turned malicious? She knew then. To whom could she trust when darkness melded with the familiar? Just as she felt the pull to retreat, a final piercing cry cut through the stillness. The shadows swallowed her whole, and she understood true horror is not the belief in ghosts, but the sudden realization that darkness walks among us. The air grew colder, biting like the sharp edges of a broken promise. Sarah's breath came out in ragged puffs, visible in the chilled atmosphere. She gripped the wall, the texture rough under her fingertips, anchoring her to reality even as shadows threatened to pull her into a nightmare. The whispers escalated, forming a clattering symphony that echoed around her. They weren't just sounds, but voices familiar and disturbing, taunting her heart, turning her body into stone. "Emily," she called, her voice trembling as she took another step toward the darkness that loomed ahead. The living room felt alive, the walls pulsing like a heartbeat, taunting her sanity. With every heartbeat, the tremors of dread escalated. She turned slowly, searching, trying to defy the wooziness making her head spin. Hallways stretched endlessly, blackened corners appearing to writhe. Then, a soft gurgle punctured the air. Sarah's heart jolted as she whipped around, eyes wide. Emily still sat, blissfully wrapped in that blanket, but her eyes were now open, staring straight into the heart of the shadows. An unblinking gaze, almost too serene for the storm that raged outside. The fear clanged like metal against metal in Sarah's chest, a visceral recognition of something deeply wrong. "Mommy." I heard it too. Emily's small voice reverberated through the silence, startling and horrifically calm. "Heard what, sweetie?" Sarah managed, approaching her daughter as though she were walking into a trap. Each blink of Emily's innocent eyes felt like a phantom tugging at her soul. "The laughter," Emily replied, her tone chillingly matter-of-fact. "Said my name and then it laughed." A wave of nausea hit Sarah like a brick wall. Her instincts screamed that she needed to protect her daughter, yet the shadows around her pinned her down, waiting just beyond sight. "Sit tight, sweetheart." She began, only to be interrupted by a deafening crash from the kitchen, followed by a shuffling sound. The noise rippled, spreading throughout the house like ink in water, dark and treacherous. The flickering lights sputtered again, plunging the room into near-complete darkness. Panic surged as she heard footsteps coming closer, heavy and deliberate. Her heart raced, pounding like a warning drum. "Mommy?" Emily's voice was now trembling. "I'm scared." "Stay here," Sarah urged, her tone firm, moving instinctively toward the kitchen. Each step a terrifying balance of dread and desperation. As she pushed through the doorway, her heart dropped. The kitchen was strewn with the remnants of dinner. Pans clattered to the ground like a haunting orchestra. But worse, the window swung open wildly, rain lashing in, revealing something unholy in the darkness. A figure lingered just outside the glass, partially obscured by the rain. Sarah's breath hitched. "Mr. Jensen?" But then it stepped into view. It wasn't him. The face was twisted, eyes hollow, features sharp like a predator's. It grinned wide, too wide, with lips stretched to an unnatural angle. The laughter from before emerged again, echoing out into the night. Billowing energy from the storm outside crashed against her senses as an outpouring of raw terror coursed through Sarah. She stumbled back, her instincts screaming to get to Emily, to run. But then she remembered. The danger wasn't just out there, but what if it lurked closer? As she hesitated, the shadowed figure raised a hand. A long skeletal finger pointed toward the door. "Come join us," it hissed, the voice not quite human, urging, seductive. Was it seeking her? Or worse, was it beckoning Emily too? In that instant, the world collapsed around her. She turned, heart racing, to dash back to her daughter, knowing all too well that the safest place was not the familiar warmth of their home, but the unsettling allure of the storm outside. But with each step toward Emily, the shadows ballooned, converging into one looming body, sealing her in darkness. Behind her, Eric's voice broke through, direct yet distorted. "It's coming for you both," he grinned as the thunder rumbled again, and all Sarah could think was that she could lose everything in a blink. And now nowhere felt safe. But the worst part? She realized she didn't know who or what might stand between her and her escape. Just as she reached for the door, a scream echoed through the darkness. Hers? Or Emily's? The shadows shifted, swirling closer, whispering promises too evil to understand. What fate awaited them if they dared to go through? Did she have the strength to protect her little girl? Or would the night consume them both? The darkness closed in, suffocating and oppressive, swallowing every glimmer of hope. Sarah's mind raced as she turned to locate Emily, her pulse surging with terror. She could barely see a foot in front of her. Panic clawed at her throat. She could hear the laughter again, a cacophony that seemed to come from all directions. It was almost playful, like a child daring her to play along. "Emily!" she shouted, straining to pierce through the veil of ominous shadows. Her voice echoed eerily, swallowed up quickly as if the night itself disapproved of her presence. She stumbled, almost losing her balance, the floor feeling alive beneath her feet like it was shifting beneath the weight of her fear. "Mommy?" Emily's voice broke through the clamor, drenched in confusion and fear. Sarah's heart cracked at the sound, sharp as glass. "I'm coming." She lunged forward, tripping over loose debris, a broken chair leg, shards from a dish, just the kind of things that should not be scattered like this. As she rushed toward the sound, her fingers brushed against something cold and clammy. Goosebumps surged across her arms. "Stay back," she shouted, half warning herself to run and half warning whatever unholy specter might be creeping in the dark. The cold grip of dread tightened around her chest as she navigated back toward where her daughter had been. "Emily, where are you?" Then she realized the blanket was now lying crumpled on the floor. Emily was gone. A sharp intake of breath caught in Sarah's throat, and in that moment, time froze. Voices swirled about her. Familiar voices. "Mommy?" Another echoing whisper rang out, a voice that made her heart drop, sounding too much like her own. "Why didn't you save me?" "Emily." She spun around, feeling a presence veer closer. Eyes darted wildly, searching for any signs of her daughter, but shadows melted into the walls, hiding all traces. But then she saw it, a shift in the dark at the corner of her eye. Something small and white. It was Emily's dress, soaked and swinging slightly as if disturbed by a breeze. But there was no breeze, and Sarah's stomach twisted. Panic set in like lightning coursing through her veins. "No, stop playing games," she snapped, forcing herself to move toward that piece of clothing. With each step, the room seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting, trying to keep her off balance. Just then, a desperate giggle erupted from the kitchen, the kind of innocent joy that chilled her to the bone. It was wrong. Everything was wrong. "Mommy!" The cry broke through, laced with genuine fright this time. "Emily!" Sarah felt her heart racing, the walls closing in on her. She launched toward the kitchen, where the corner shadows twisted ominously. Once inside, the darkness now felt heavier, like pressure pushing down on her. The walls whispered, hissing secrets. The low laughter transformed into a chorus, mocking her dread. "Join us," the phrase slithered into her mind like poison. Sarah fought the urge to give in, to listen, to join. She tore her gaze away from the unnaturally wide grin of that figure outside, almost as if it were feasting on the chaos. But Emily, she had to find Emily. Sarah felt a strange pull, a weighty intuition that guiding her there would end in despair. Yet she steeled herself and pressed deeper into the shadows. "Stay close to me. I'm not leaving you," she screamed into the suffocating void. The shadows stirred, a crack forming and expanding. There, she could see the outline of her daughter's small form huddled in a corner. Relief surged through her, but it was tempered with a deep sense of dread that washed over her. "Emily!" she shouted, but as she lunged forward, a jarring scream pierced through the darkness, echoing like thunder. The light above flickered, and Sarah lost sight of her daughter again. The laughter morphed into a wicked cackle, slashing through Sarah's sanity. It felt like they were playing with her, mocking her attempts to save her child. The grip of terror wrapped tighter, squeezing the breath from her lungs. "No, I won't let you take her." Desperation surged as she felt the shadows surge toward her. The kitchen door slammed shut with a resounding bang. But in that singular moment of chaos, Sarah heard a voice clearer than all the rest, drifting like smoke. A chilling invitation where waiting and the darkness seemed to beckon, promising everything she feared. What would she sacrifice to rescue Emily? In that frozen moment, uncertainty clawed at her, and she knew she had to act, but would she even survive the choice looming before her? The walls pulsed with a life of their own, closing in on Sarah as she strained to breathe. Shadows crawled, skirting across the edges of her vision like hungry beasts. Each flickering light bulb overhead sent her heart racing, the dimness swallowing each pulse of illumination. Emily. Panic laced her voice, raw and desperate. She felt the darkness squeeze her, pulling her deeper into its grip. Fear wrapped around her throat, stifling her cries. The laughter echoed again, bubbling up like a hidden evil, mocking her helplessness. In a fleeting breath, the air shifted, carrying with it the scent of something sweet yet rotten. Her stomach twisted. Emily, please, where are you? Suddenly, she caught movement in the corner of her eye. It was a blur, darting around the edge of the kitchen table, barely glimpsed but unmistakable. Sarah's body surged forward, over broken dishes and wrinkled tablecloth, each step feeling like a gamble against a hidden landmine. Mommy! The voice sliced through the chaos. Closer now. Fueled by the sound, she rounded the table, but the sight that met her eyes had her instinctively recoiling. Emily sat on the floor, tiny fists clenched at her sides, her eyes wide and unblinking, staring at something just beyond Sarah's view. Emily! She shouted again, scrambling toward her daughter. The black tendrils of darkness seemed to retreat momentarily, charmed by the presence of innocence. Mommy. Emily's voice was thick with confusion and fear. I can't. Her words trailed off, replaced by a hollow giggle that rattled through the air, weaving through the broken silence like an unseen hand. Don't listen. Please, don't listen to any of them. Sarah felt a rush of urgency, desperation pushing her to act. We need to go now. But Emily didn't move. Mommy, they want to play, the girl murmured now, her gaze flickering between worlds. They don't want you to take me. Each of those words landed like a baton against Sarah's sanity, setting off an alarm in her mind. The shadows pulsed again, and suddenly the kitchen walls shivered in delight, more alive than before, a writhing entity eager to feast. Emily, we need to leave. She bent down, grabbing her daughter's hand, but the feel of cold air enveloped her fingers like a vice. In an instant, Emily's grip slipped away. No, Mommy. I want to stay. Her voice grew high, the innocence corrupted. Emily, please. But the darkness reacted violently, erupting into chaos. A heavy door slammed against the wall, followed by a flurry of laughter that felt serrated, sharp against the ears. Sarah turned her head just in time to see a shadowy figure dart away, pulling along a trail of whispers that echoed tales of despair. Join us, the chorus rose again, filling the void. Voices she recognized. Friends lost, loved ones forsaken. Stop it. A surge of defiance erupted within her, driving her forward despite everything spiraling out of control. Emily, it's a trick. Yet even as she rushed toward her daughter, a split-second glimpse of what lay beyond tore at her heart. The shadows swirled thicker, forming arms that beckoned from the inky black. Mommy, I see them. They're so much fun. Cold dread settled heavily in Sarah's chest. This was no game. This was ensnarement. No, you're not their plaything. Her hands gripped Emily's shoulders, her gaze darting to find a way out. As if in response, the shadows loomed larger, a wall of darkness surrounding them, throbbing with hunger. Mommy, Mommy! Emily's voice broke again, trembling as she strained away from Sarah's hold. It's just a game. As the shadows stretched, clawing toward them, Sarah felt the corner of her sanity fray. She had to make a choice: tune out the voices or give in. But at what cost? A stifled scream broke through her lips as the darkness surged like an avalanche, swallowing her whole. And behind it, an echo reverberated through the chaos. A dreadful promise: you're not leaving without her. In that disorienting moment, reality warped, and Sarah felt the pull of the darkness intensify. What would she become to reclaim the only thing that mattered? The weight of the shadows darkened, closing in on every side. Time twisted, and Sarah knew that soon, very soon, she would have to decide, to fight or fall. But first, she had to find a way out before the whispers consumed everything she loved. Would it be enough? Or was the game already rigged? The abyss of shadows writhed around Sarah, tendrils curling and reaching for her sanity. She stumbled as she struggled to keep a grip on reality, the laughter resonating like a death knell. With each passing second, the whispers grew louder, drowning out her thoughts. They clawed at her mind, promising safety if only she joined them. Emily. Her voice trembled, desperation breaking through the despair. Please, look at me. The little girl remained entranced, her small frame rooted to the spot as if carved from stone. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing like thunder. The darkness loomed closer, and she could almost feel its breath cold and rancid against her skin. She felt the shadows inching around her feet, curling, hungry. Mommy, Emily whispered again. But now, a cruel smile twisted her lips. They want you too. They want to play. Panic surged anew. The innocence of her child was tainted. Sarah fought to break the spell, to wrench her daughter away from this malevolent hold. She took a deep breath, forcing the words past the fear clenching her throat. No, Emily, don't listen to them. They lie. Emily blinked slowly, her gaze flickering as if battling an unseen force. But they make me feel happy. The shadows gurgled in response, an unsettling chorus that vibrated through the room as the air thickened with a cloying chill. Frantically, Sarah scanned the kitchen, searching for a way out. The front door felt like a mirage, but the darkness shifted, a living wall. She couldn't remember how she entered. The room twisted around her like an endless maze. Don't you see? This isn't happiness, Sarah shouted, letting the fierceness bleed into her voice. It's a trap. They want to hurt you. As if reacting to her words, the shadows recoiled, letting out a low, spine-chilling moan. Emily's grip on consciousness faltered and her brow furrowed, caught in the conflict. Mommy, the little girl shook her head as if trying to wake from a dream. I don't want to leave. Before Sarah could respond, the shadows surged, dripping from the walls like ink. They sought to reclaim their victim, reaching with elongated fingers that smelled of decay. No, no, Sarah screamed. She lunged forward, grabbing Emily's waist and wrenching her to her feet. The little girl's eyes glazed, confusion and fear swirling within them like storm clouds. Mommy, help me, Emily cried, desperate now, her childlike terror pulling at Sarah's heart. Hold on to me, Sarah urged. They turned together, but the darkness was relentless. They dashed toward the kitchen door, the shadows thrumming in anger, angrily lashing out. Sarah felt a sharp pain slice across her arm as a shadowy claw grazed her skin, cold and clawing, leaving a trail of icy fire. She winced, forcing her body to keep moving. Mommy, Emily wailed as they collided against the door, and it resisted, locked against them as if possessed. The laughter surged around them, rising in fever pitch, a cacophony begging them to succumb to despair. Suddenly, the door cracked open just a sliver, a faint flicker of light on the other side. Hope? With one final thrust, Sarah threw her weight against the door, praying it would budge. Come on, please, she shouted, twisting the doorknob with all her strength. The shadows screamed in rage, and Emily clutched Sarah's shirt, her small hands trembling. But as the door swung wide, spilling desperate light across the darkness, a voice pierced the veil, a sinister hiss that curled around Sarah like smoke. You can't take her. The game has just begun. The world outside was both a vision of comfort and horror. Sarah stepped into it, but the shadows clawed at her heels, attempting to draw her back. With every ounce of determination, she dragged Emily across the threshold into the blinding light. But in that moment, everything shattered. The ground shook beneath them, the sounds of the Forsaken echoing like a nightmare unleashed. Mommy! With fear gripping her heart, Sarah turned to her child, her blood running cold at the sight before her. Emily stood rooted, eyes wide with terror. The shadows behind them coiled and pulsed, ready to pounce. Run! Sarah screamed, heart racing, as the very air around them thickened with dread. But would Emily run, or had the shadows already claimed her soul? As that thought hung in the air, Sarah felt the weight of the darkness shift, curling around her like a predator preparing to strike. The game wasn't over yet. Sarah pulled Emily toward the distant sounds of the world outside, her heart hammering against her ribs like a frantic animal trapped in a cage. The bright daylight seemed to mock her, a stark contrast to the swirling shadows that grasped hungrily at the edges of her vision. Emily's small hand went slack in hers, and a deep chill settled over Sarah, like an icy wave crashing down. "Listen to me, Emily," she pleaded, panic rising in her throat. "We need to get away from here. We need to," but Emily was fixated again, her gaze drawn back toward the darkness, as if the shadows held a magnetic pull that Sarah could not fathom. "They are calling me, Mommy." The way her name slipped off the little girl's lips felt wrong, like an echo of a voice that shouldn't belong to her. "No!" Sarah shrieked, spinning her daughter around, desperate to break whatever hold bound her. There was fear and confusion in Emily's big, innocent eyes, but the flicker of recognition was fading fast. "We have to leave now." The shadows surged forward, a tidal wave of darkness that rushed as if alive, fed by their fear. They stretched like fingers, clawing at Sarah's flesh, determined to pull them back. Sarah gasped as she felt one of those icy tendrils wrap tightly around her ankle, dragging her down toward the ground. "Mommy!" Emily cried, tears spilling down her cheeks. "No, never!" Sarah screamed, digging her fingers into the earth, clawing for purchase as she fought to rise against the consuming dark. Shadows bit against her, but she focused all her strength. With one powerful tug, she broke free, yanking Emily along with her. They stumbled away from the door and into the bright, harsh light of day, but the shadows lurked just beyond the threshold, watching, waiting, whispering words that folded into her mind. An ominous promise of revenge. But as they gained distance from the house, Sarah realized she wasn't safe yet. The chaos still crackled in the air, the sinister laughter now echoing in the distance. It was all around them, tainting the vibrant day with an oppressive dread. "Mommy, I'm scared," Emily whimpered, her small feet struggling to keep up. "I don't want to play anymore." Sarah's chest tightened, every instinct screaming at her to protect her daughter. "We just need to get somewhere safe, away from here." But the roads ahead twisted like a maze, leading them in circles back toward the house they'd just escaped. There had to be a way out, but all roads were ensnared in shadow. Panic rose again, hot and viscous. "Look!" Emily pointed at the sky, voice quaking. "They're coming." And there they were, clouds swirling above, blacker than night, with heavy winds whipping through with a malicious intent. Within moments, caustic rain began to pour, a hard, stinging downpour that felt like nails against Sarah's skin. "We have to find shelter," Sarah gasped, her eyes darting as the laughter crescendoed, mingling with the sound of the storm. They stumbled into an abandoned gas station at the edge of town, its fluorescent lights flickering erratically, casting long shadows across the linoleum floor. Sarah slammed the door shut, breathless and frantic. The sound echoed against the walls, something almost like a sigh, but it wasn't over yet. The laughter outside rose to a fever pitch, turning into a raucous roar. "Mommy, I don't want to be here," Emily cried, scrunching tightly to her leg, her little body trembling against the fear that thickened the air. "I know, baby, but we have to stay calm. We'll be okay," Sarah whispered, but her heart raced with doubt. Suddenly, the shadows bunched together outside the glass, taking shape, forming a vortex of despair. They pressed against the windows, taunting, filling every crevice with dread. Then, a voice echoed through the storm, deep, gravelly, and familiar. "You can't hide from us, you left us behind, but we'll find you." Sarah's heart stopped. The darkness was closing in, and with it, the truth began to unfold. "Mommy, help!" Emily screamed suddenly, eyes wide, pointing behind her. Sarah turned slowly, dread pooling in her stomach as she grasped the truth. The shadows weren't just outside. Something sinister had already breached their fragile sanctuary. But what did it want, and who would it take next? The air in the gas station thickened. Sarah's breaths quickened as she turned to face whatever horrid presence had slipped inside. Emily clung tightly to her mother's leg, the girl's small fingers digging in like tiny claws, her innocent face distorted with terror. "Don't move," Sarah whispered, her voice shaking. She scanned the dark corners of the gas station, every flickering light casting shadows that danced wickedly along the walls. The voice outside had faded, but the echoes of its promise twisted in her mind like a coiled snake. Suddenly, the glass door rattled violently, as if the darkness was demanding entry, furious at being denied. "Mommy," Emily whimpered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I don't like it." "Shoo, it's okay," Sarah murmured, though the tremor in her voice belied her assurance. She glanced around, searching for anything that might help. The counter beside her lay strewn with dust-covered beers and chipped snacks. In the corner sat a rusted broom. It was hardly a weapon, but it would have to do. "Stay behind me," she instructed Emily, her hands trembling as she grasped the broom. The laughter had gone silent, replaced by an oppressive stillness that urged her to move faster to escape. She edged cautiously towards the door, her heart pounding like a war drum. The shadows outside twisted, reaching and curling like smoke, and for a moment, she thought she saw familiar faces forming in the darkness. Figures she thought were long gone. "No," Sarah breathed, stepping backward, feeling a pulling sensation as if the shadows were drawing her in. "Mommy, look," Emily gasped, wide-eyed, pointing towards the far end of the station. In the half-light, another shadow peeled away from the corner, slowly taking shape. It was taller, darker, its features obscured, but there was no mistaking the twisted grin that emerged. It looked almost human, yet every instinct screamed that it was anything but. With a primal scream, Sarah dashed to the opposite side of the room, pulling Emily along. The laughter erupted again, a cacophony of mocking taunts swirling around them, each note sending icy fingers of fear down Sarah's spine. "Go," she shouted, urging Emily towards the back exit. But the child froze, her gaze transfixed on the apparition now blocking the door. The figure stood tall, shrouded in black, with empty eyes that seemed to drink in the very essence of light. "Mommy, I can't," Emily whispered, her small voice trembling. "Run," Sarah screamed, feeling a surge of desperation. She pivoted, brandishing the broom like a sword, the wood feeling flimsy and useless in her grip. "Get out of here." But before she could follow her own command, the figure surged forward. In one swift motion, it stretched its shadowy hand toward Emily. "No!" Sarah lunged forward, heart racing. Her body collided with the dark figure, and for a moment, she felt a chilling embrace. It was not a physical touch but a crushing weight, a memory flooding back. She gasped as visions spiraled through her mind, images of laughter, love, and then darkness, an abyss that yawned wide. Emily screamed, and Sarah barely registered the surge of pain she felt as the figure recoiled, thrusting her away. She landed hard on the floor, air escaping her lungs in a rush. "All your past mistakes will haunt you forever," the voice echoed, each word disintegrating into sinister laughter that rang in her ears. The shadows twirled around the room, thickening and tightening their grip. With trembling hands, Sarah fought to lift herself, but the shadows pressed down heavy and suffocating. "Emily," she shouted, panic clawing at her throat. "Mommy," the girl cried, her small frame illuminated by the flickering lights. And in that moment, amidst the chaos, Sarah locked eyes with her daughter. What lay before them was a fate intertwined in darkness. But as the shadows threatened to swallow them whole, a piercing shriek ripped through the air, a sound that made Sarah's blood run cold. The laughter kept coming, but it was different now, more sinister, less joy and almost hungry. Was the darkness after Emily, or had it already claimed her? And then she understood. It wanted her past, her fears, but what if it wanted more? The heavy clouds outside rumbled, and she knew one thing for certain: this was just the beginning. What would they have to sacrifice to escape before the shadows became their reality? Sarah could feel the shadows closing in, thick and swirling like fog that chilled her bones. The air stung her lungs as she gasped for breath, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Emily," she cried again, her voice wavering. Her eyes darted back and forth. She couldn't see her daughter. The store was shrouded in a veil of darkness, every corner stretching into nothingness. "Where are you?" Sarah shouted, panic tightening around her throat. That relentless laughter and echo of her own nightmares filled the space, slowly building until it enveloped her. And then, through the haze, she spotted Emily, all wide eyes and trembling lips completely frozen in place, staring at something that made her heart tighten with dread. "Emily, come to me," Sarah commanded, but her legs felt like lead, the shadows holding her back. The figure shifted, looming closer, its silhouette becoming clearer. The twisted grin returned, sharper and more defined, revealing teeth that glistened like polished knives. Sarah's mind raced. Was it truly here for Emily? The guilt surged up again, memories of mistakes prickling her skin like needles. "Mommy, I can't," Emily whimpered, her voice a fragile whisper, breaking the sudden silence that had fallen. It was as if time stretched, and the world paused in that moment, suspended in pure terror. "I can't leave you," Sarah shouted, forcing her body to move, fighting against the dark weights that seemed to pull her down. She lunged forward, grabbing Emily's hand, and with a fierce determination, she pulled her daughter closer. "We have to go now." But the figure stood firm, unrelenting as the shadows flickered like flames around it. The laughter rose again, seemingly erupting from all directions. It echoed in Sarah's ears, deepening her sense of helplessness. The walls felt as though they were closing in, squeezing the breath from her lungs. "Let her go," Sarah screamed, brandishing the broom, the wood feeling even more frail as it quivered in her grasp. She thrust it forward, but it passed right through the figure, an illusion made of shadows and darkness. The apparition lunged, and Sarah barely managed to pull Emily back just in time. The winds outside howled, whistling through cracks in the gas station walls, mixing with the sorrowful wails of the trapped souls around them. "What do you want?" she cried desperately, hoping for any inkling of understanding amid the chaos. "Everything," the voice hissed, 1,000 whispers intertwined. It slashed through the air like a knife, leaving a chill in its wake. Sarah suddenly felt a tug at her heart, a beautiful yet devastating memory of laughter hanging in the air. The sight of a family dinner, candles flickering, love all around until it all faded away. The darkness fed on her losses, her failures, transforming cherished moments into a vortex of despair. "Mommy, I feel it," Emily gasped, shaking her head as tears streamed down her cheeks. "It's so sad. Make it stop. Hold on to me," Sarah yelled, shaking her head to dispel the darkness creeping inside her mind. With newfound resolve, she pulled Emily close, feeling the warmth of her daughter amidst the suffocating void. "We don't belong here, not to you." The shadows writhed, furious at being challenged. The laughter transformed into a haunting song, swirling around them, begging to pull them in, to swallow them whole. Sarah's heart raced, the desperation driving her onward. "We're leaving you, hear me? We choose to live." She gripped Emily tighter, the broom raised high, and with every ounce of strength, she dashed toward the exit. But as she barreled towards the door, a cold, clouded figure intervened, arms outstretched like gnarled branches threatening to wrap around them. Sarah felt the darkness seeping into her very being, promising forgiveness through despair. But she surged ahead, a primal instinct propelling her forward. Just as they seemed to break free from the grasp of the shadows, a new sound cut through the veil, loud, jolting. A car horn blaring outside shattered the darkness. But in that moment of distraction, something grabbed Emily's ankle, dragging her back. "Emily!" Sarah screamed, reaching out, her heart pounding in her chest. The shadows continued to swirl, transforming once more. What more would they have to fight? Who else would be taken? "Mommy, help!" Emily's voice echoed, both a plea and a warning as Sarah felt the last tendrils of light fading behind her. Would she be able to save her daughter, or would the darkness claim them both? The shadows twisted and writhed like living things, pulling Sarah away from Emily. The sense of helplessness clawed at Sarah's throat as she fumbled, trying to grab Emily's hand. But the darkness was relentless, coiling around her daughter like a snake, ready to strike. "Let her go," Sarah shrieked, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. She lunged but felt something cold latch onto her wrist, an icy grip from below, dragging her toward the ground. The figure stood there, a grotesque silhouette, laughing, the sound echoing off the walls like a haunting melody. It stretched out its long, bony fingers, reaching for Emily as if trying to caress her cheek. No, Sarah thought, sheer panic surging through her body. If she hesitated, she would lose her forever. Emily, look at me, Sarah shouted, anchoring her gaze on her daughter. You have to fight. You're stronger than this darkness. Emily's wide eyes blinked back at her, visibly shaken yet determined. Mommy, I can feel it pulling me. It's so dark I don't want to go. Her words were strangled by fear, but the connection remained an invisible thread between them. With all her strength, Sarah wrestled against the grip pulling her down. The shadows spiraled around her like a tempest, threatening to engulf her completely. She was drowning in darkness, but she would not let it claim her. Not now. Not ever. Think of your happy place, she urged, a desperate plan forming in her mind. Remember the time we went to the beach? The sun setting? That beautiful sand? Emily nodded, tears glistening as she fought against the tears and echoes of despair clawing around her. Sarah could see the spark of light start to flicker in Emily's eyes, pushing through the shadows like a beacon. Now take my hand. Hold on tight, Sarah called out with a fierce intensity, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. If this creature wanted to feed on despair, she would give it something else, something it couldn't take. With a sudden burst of energy, Sarah grasped Emily's hand, feeling the warmth of her daughter's spirit igniting the cold around them. We choose happiness, Sarah screamed, thrusting the broom toward the figure. To her astonishment, the broom pierced the darkness. A brilliant light erupted from the impact, illuminating the store and sending the shadows screeching backward. The figure's laughter transformed into a screech of agony, contorting as the light engulfed it. No, you cannot escape, it howled, flickering like a dying candle. Now, Emily, Sarah yelled, pulling her daughter toward the exit. They sprinted, the light pushing back the shadows, igniting hope in Sarah's heart. But just as they neared the door, the shadow creature lashed out. Goodbye, child, it shrieked, lunging for Emily once more, tendrils of darkness curling like a serpent. In a desperate act of love, Sarah shoved Emily aside, the broom raised high as she faced the creature. You won't take her. Never, she screamed, channeling every ounce of her will into the wooden handle. A blinding flash of energy erupted, forcing the shadows to recoil. But just as Sarah thought they might escape, those murky tendrils entwined around her legs, sending a wave of ice-cold terror through her. Mommy, Emily shouted, desperately reaching out, but it was too late. A dark vortex opened beneath Sarah, swallowing her whole. She fought against it, clawing at reality, but the void was stronger. With one last scream of defiance, Sarah felt herself pulled down, leaving Emily alone, trembling as she stumbled into the light. And that's when the shadows whispered secrets into Emily's ear, promises of power and vengeance. Would Emily embrace the darkness to save her mother, or would she fight to keep the light alive? The swirling vortex of darkness enveloped Sarah, its icy grip stealing her breath and dragging her deeper into despair. Every ounce of light that had flooded the gas station seemed to dissipate as she plummeted, separated from her daughter's terrified cries. A suffocating darkness whispered her past failures, wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. Tears streamed down her cheeks, soaking into the blackness that threatened to consume her whole. Yet amidst the despair, a flicker of determination ignited in Sarah's heart. I will fight, she whispered. I will never give up. The shadows howled, furious at her resolve, but she refused to allow despair to win. Summoning every memory of love, of laughter with Emily, she began to push back against the darkness. Up above, Emily stood at the edge of the gas station, panic and confusion clashing in her innocent eyes. She watched the shadows twist and wriggle, contorting into monstrous shapes before retracting. Mommy, she cried once more, her voice trembling with fear. But deep down, She felt Sarah's spirit reaching for her, a tether stronger than the shadows that bound them. Emily. The fierce love enveloped the little girl, igniting courage within her. You're stronger than this. You can do it. Remembering the warmth of days spent together, she clenched her fists, fighting against the tide of despair. The storm's oppressive laughter throbbed around her, but Emily stood firm. I reject you, she shouted, her innocent voice ringing with strength. You can't have my mommy. As if in response to her defiance, the shadows flickered, swirling angrily around her feet. The vortex churned, trying to steal Emily away, but she held her ground. I choose love. I choose light. Energy surged within her, illuminating the darkness like a lighthouse guiding a lost ship back to shore. Emily envisioned the soft glow of their home, the laughter during family dinners, the shared warmth on winter nights, and every treasured moment they had shared. On the other end, Sarah felt the familiar pull of love threading through the darkness. Emily, fight. Remember our moments. Believe in yourself. Suddenly, the darkness retreated, a clear path emerging as the lights above flickered back to life. The shadows recoiled, realizing the strength of the bond between mother and daughter was too powerful to conquer. With renewed vigor, Emily moved, running toward the edge of the gas station. Mommy, I'm coming. In that moment, the darkness roared, a primal scream that reverberated through the air. But it was too late. The light surrounded Emily, a radiant shield emanating from her core. The heavens began to open above them, rain cascading down like cascading diamonds, washing away the remnants of fear. Grab my hand, Sarah shouted, a shining beacon now visible through the foggy blackness. Their eyes locked, as Emily charged forward, her heart racing with fierce determination. She leaped, just as the shadows threatened to snatch her back. Time slowed as Emily bounded toward her mother, fingers outstretched. Together, they cried, their hands clasped. A surge of warmth flooded through their connection. The shadows screamed, turning black, chaotic waves crashing against the radiant bond they shared. The light expanded, pushing back the dark tide, scorching the walls that had confined them for too long. Suddenly, the vortex burst open, sending shards of darkness scattering like shattered glass. Sarah and Emily were flung backward, propelled into the vibrant world beyond, freed at last from the clutches of despair. Laughter erupted around them, held by the storm as they landed outside, drenched in raindrops but alive. Mommy? Emily breathed, tears of relief flowing. We did it. Sarah knelt, pulling her daughter into a fierce embrace, the warmth of their connection flooding through them like a healing balm. We did, baby. Together, always together. As they held each other, the storm began to dissipate, the clouds parting above like curtains drawn to reveal a bright sun. The darkness was gone, vanished in the wake of their shared love, leaving only the sweet scent of rain-soaked earth and the promise of new beginnings. In that moment, they felt whole, united against whatever trials might come next. Now let us get home, Sarah said, gazing into Emily's sparkling eyes, filled with innocence and strength. No matter what, I'll always protect you. And as they turned towards the road leading away from the gas station, they knew one truth would always guide them. Love conquers fear, light overcomes darkness, and together, they were unstoppable. With the storm behind them, they moved forward into a new beginning, hand in hand, hearts intertwined, ready for whatever life had in store. And for all of you following their journey, now it's your turn. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will take you even deeper into the unknown. Smash that like button now to show your support. I want to hear from you in the comments. What were your reactions? What did you think of the ending? Lastly, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us keep our community growing and thriving together.